Hey guys, it's Maddie. Yeah, it's me again. Just wanted to say hi to you guys and welcome you all to my kitchen. Now I know I haven't done a video like this before, but I figured, hey, why not just make a cooking video because I love to cook and I'm currently making one of my favorite dishes of all time, chili. Now a lot of people think like, oh, chili is really hard, it takes a long time to cook, I could never make it. Well, if I can make it, then you certainly can, because I am not a pro in the kitchen by any means. I'm just a 17-year-old girl who loves healthy, homemade dishes like this. This is one of my favorite dishes ever to make and to eat. My family loves it, my friends love it, and I really think that you guys will too. So I really hope you guys enjoy. It's a really easy recipe to do, to follow along, so let's get cooking. Okay, so after your pan has had a bit of time to heat up, I'm just going to put in some extra virgin olive oil. Fair bit in the bottom of the pan. And then I'm going to grab my onions. Now, this is just some onion that I chopped up. I had a really big white onion sitting in the fridge. So I just used about 3/4 of it and just roughly dice that up nicely. And I'm just going to start sauteing this. And I'm actually just going to turn the heat down a little bit. It was about medium-high. And now I'm bringing it down a little bit closer to medium, just so the oil doesn't burn. Okay, so these onions have been cooking for about 3 to 4 minutes now. You really just want to wait until you can really smell them cooking. And then we can go ahead and add our ground beef. Alright, so I'm just using some extra lean ground beef, as you can see. And I'm just popping this in. We stored this in the freezer and we just took it out to thaw overnight in the fridge. Just kind of open it up. Raw meat is nothing to be afraid of, nothing to be scared of. You just have to be careful when you're working with it. So now you're going to want to dispose of that, obviously, and wash your hands. You want to always make sure to wash your hands when dealing with raw meat, just to prevent any sickness or bacteria or anything like that to occur. And my meat's actually still a little bit frozen, so you just kind of have to wait for it to warm up and just sort of move it around and break it up in the pan. At this point, you can also rise the temperature a little bit. I'm just bringing it back up to 8. And keeping in mind that on my oven, the number 5 is medium and the number 10 is high. So it's about medium-high right now. Just breaking the meat up. It's never really a big deal if your meat is still frozen a bit on the inside, because the heat from the pan will really just help you break it up easily and defrost it in like minutes. So it's not something to fret about too much. Of course, with this recipe, you can also use ground chicken or ground turkey, pork, whatever you like. You can also make this a vegetarian meal and use tofu if you'd like. I personally am not a vegetarian, so I'm not really sure how you would go about cooking that, but I'm sure there are many different tutorials here on YouTube that you could follow. And Google is, of course, always your best friend, so that's definitely something to keep in mind as well. So as you can see, my meat is just starting to brown up, and it still needs to be a little bit broken up a little bit. Just take some muscle power and some patience. And as soon as the meat is completely brown, it will be cooked. So you don't have to worry about it being safe to eat or not. Okay, so the meat has been browning up with the onions for about 5 minutes. And we're up at this stage right now, and we're ready to move on with the next ingredient. So as you can see, the meat is pretty much cooked, pretty much brown all the way through. So I'm just going to grab my first spice that I'm going to use, which is chili powder. You can find this at any local grocery store. You can get them in big things like this if you make a lot of chili like I do fairly often. You can also get them in little pouches like this. And I'm sure you can probably get them in little things like this if you're not going to use very much. But for this recipe, we're using quite a bit. So keeping the temperature where it is, I'm just going to grab my chili powder and dump some in my hand. Now you're going to go with like a heaping handful like that. If you like your chili not as spicy, you can go with a little less, but really, the chili powder isn't going to provide all of the spice that we're going to use for this recipe. So, obviously, adding a little bit and then more as you go is easier than trying to take it away from the recipe, which is basically impossible once it's already in the dish. But if you really don't like spicy food all that much, then of course you can add less. But honestly, I think this is a pretty good amount. And actually, come to think of it, I'm going to add a little bit more. My handful wasn't as heaping as I usually like it to be, so about that much more. And with any spices like this, it's always a good idea to wash your hands before you touch your face or touch your eyes, your nose, your mouth, anything, because otherwise you're gonna get huge amount of discomfort and it's just gonna burn and just really be uncomfortable. So that's something to also keep in mind. So if you're likely to forget, then I would suggest stopping right here and washing your hands for a few seconds and then coming back to stir this around. One of the reasons I really like making chili is because it's such a forgiving dish. It's a very forgiving recipe. You can't really mess it up. I mean, there's never an issue with knowing if the meat is cooked enough, if you're gonna make your guests sick, if you're making this for a dinner party or anything like that, because with the ground meat, you know when it's cooked because it'll change color. Alright, so I'm just really browning up the meat a little bit more while toasting the chili powder. It just really intensifies the flavor and gives it just a little bit more oomph, which is always a good thing. So it's been about 2 minutes or so, and I'm going to go on to the next stage. Okay, so now is the time to add some moisture into the pan because it's fairly dry now. The majority of the oil has been absorbed by the ingredients. And you need to add some moisture to this very dry mix. So I'm going to move on with my tomatoes. I just have 2 cans of diced tomatoes here. I'm just going to add both of those to the pot. You can hear immediately the pan stops sizzling as much. The temperature drops and everything just starts to melt together, which is what we want, what we're looking for. So you're just going to mix that up. And you can now go ahead and add the rest of your spices, depending on what you're in the mood for, what you have in the house. But I am just about to show you guys my blend of spices that I absolutely love with this chili. I've made chili a few times, a few different ways, and I feel like this is the best blend that I can find with the stuff that I have available in my house. Now, what you might notice in this recipe is that I'm not very exact with my measurements, especially with the spices and stuff like that, because it is a very forgiving recipe, and it really all depends on how spicy you like something, or how much of this you like of it, how much of that you like of it, how sweet, how savory, how whatever. It really just depends on your personal preference, but I will give you guys a bit of an idea. So right here I have some beef bovril from Knorr, and I'm gonna add some of it. This is going to be a very scientific measurement. It's called a zhuzh. About that much. That's a zhuzh in my eyes. And mix that up. It's really just going to intensify the beefy flavor and give it some more depth, which is always a good thing. Bovril also gives it that taste that you've been like cooking this dish for like all day, when really you've only been cooking for like a half hour to an hour. It just makes it beautiful. So the next spice we're going to add is some paprika. This isn't the spicy paprika. This is just regular plain old paprika. And again, I'm going to use my palm measurement. And I'm going to pour out about that much. Paprika just adds some nice sweetness to the dish. And just a little bit of something, you know? You know when you're eating a dish and you're tasting it and you're just like, oh, like I can't pick out the flavor, but it just adds, it's just, there's something there and you can't really put your finger on it. Paprika is a great way of doing it. Another great spice that I love adding for that purpose is ground cinnamon. Now a lot of you are probably thinking, hey, hold up, Maddie. Wait, you're adding ground cinnamon to a savory dish? Isn't cinnamon just typically used in desserts? Which is true. I mean, you've got your cinnamon buns and all that sort of stuff, your cinnamon sugar, whatever, but ground cinnamon adds some really nice heat and warmth to the dish. It's not spicy, but it's also not terribly sweet either. It just adds, again, a little bit of something that people wouldn't really expect, and they wouldn't be able to pick out the ground cinnamon, but it just adds enough to be there and just warm up all the rest of the flavors. So you have just about that much. Of course, your hands might not be the same size that mine are, but again, just kind of go with it. Your instincts. You can always add more later after it cooks for a little bit, you know. The key to chili and to one pot meals is to add some, let it cook a little bit, taste it, sort of see how you're feeling, see how it's tasting, what you think, add a little bit more of some stuff, whatever, and just go from there. Alright, so now we're just going to add some ground salt. This is just California sea salt. You can use whatever you want. I don't like a ton of salt in mine, just because we're going to be adding some cheese later on top. So I don't know about that much. Salt is one of those things where it's a personal preference, and you can always go back and add more. Of course, once we cook this down a little bit more, the saltiness and the flavors are going to intensify, so you don't want to add too much right at the start. But just kind of go with it. Go with the flow. You know, it's not rocket science, it's just cooking. So now I'm going to grab some chopped garlic and a spoon. Let me see here. I'll actually do measurements for you guys right now. So this is a teaspoon. I'm going to add about, I love garlic. So I'm thinking like that's like a heaping teaspoon. So like 2 of those of the garlic. Because I'm Italian, I love garlic. Who doesn't? It's my motto. And then I'm going to go in with, let me see, some minced ginger. I just get them in the jars because it's easier than like opening up a bulb and having to do all that sort of stuff. Ginger just adds a little bit of something different, and that's about a teaspoon, sorry. Just adds something to it. And you always need a something when you're making chili. Just sort of an unexpected flavor, which works really nicely with the rest of them. And we just have one more spice, and the amount of this that you're going to add is really going to depend again on how spicy you want this chili. I like spicy, my parents like spicy too, but not as spicy as I like it, so I'm going to add some crushed red pepper flakes. If you're someone who doesn't like spicy foods a lot, or you can't handle really spicy foods, I wouldn't suggest adding this. I would suggest just going with the chili powder because it does have some heat. But if you're a little bit daring and you're willing to try and you like spicy foods, then I'd go ahead and add some of these babies because it just adds a different heat to it. You know, you just want to go a little bit. Eyeball it, you know. And you can see that this is boiling, which is what we want. Mix that around. And actually, I'm just going to add a little bit of black pepper. Ideally, freshly ground is always better. but you go with what you have. So that's what I'm doing. Okay. Well, I can really smell all the spices. It's all coming together very nicely. Now I'm actually just going to turn this down a little bit to about medium-ish heat, a little closer to the high on just one of the notches, but basically just medium heat, just because you don't want to make it bubble over or anything like that. Just do that. And while this is cooking, you can just let this sit. I'd suggest grabbing a plate or something. This is just the one I use to have the onions on it. Knocking off the spoon and putting the spoon on the plate just so you don't have any mess to clean up on your oven when you're finished. So while that's bubbling away, we're going to move on to our next step, which is the beans. Okay, so with the beans, you're going to want to put a colander into your sink. And I'm just using dark red kidney beans, 2 big cans of them. And I'm just going to open them up with a can opener. And I like to do 1 can at a time just because it makes it a little bit easier for the next step. So just keep opening it. Once it's opened, take your beans and dump them into the colander. Make sure you get them all out. Then you're just going to want to run some water and rinse the beans a little bit. Now, lots of people, when they think of beans, they think of like Beans, Beans, the musical fruit. I'm sure you guys can fill in the rest of that song. They do give you some gas, and I'm pretty sure it has something to do with the starchy liquid that they're in when they're canned. So a great way to get rid of some of that starchy liquid is just by rinsing them off, which is what I like to do. So just kind of run your fingers through it, shake the colander around, do what you need to do, and rinse those babies up. In my hands too. Alright, now I'm just going to go ahead and grab the other can, open it up, dump it in, and do the exact same thing. That's why I do them separately, so that it's easier to get to the bottom beans, because it'll be less beans than if I had 2 different layers of beans with the 2 cans. Okay, so once the beans have been rinsed off, you're just going to want to shake out the colander a little bit, just to drain out the water as much as you can, and bring it over to our pan. Okay, so you can see our pot is boiling with the rest of our chili, and we're just going to put our beans in. Just carefully dump them in from the colander. Again, the temperature lowers in the pan, and you're just going to want to mix things around really nicely. Doesn't that look good? Okay, so anytime after you've added the beans, as soon as the beans are fully cooked through and are warmed through, which will take about 5 to 10 minutes or so, you can serve this if you're on a time crunch. So at this point, the beans have been cooking in here for probably 7 minutes or so. It's basically done. As soon as you taste it and you figure out if you need any more spices or anything, you're good. But of course, with any sort of stew or sauce or one-pot meal, anything like that, the longer you cook something, the better. The more intense the flavors will become, and the more married and mellowed it'll all taste. So I would suggest, of course, cooking this for as long as you can. But obviously, if you're in a time crunch, if you need to head out the door to go to soccer practice or dance or whatever, then of course you can eat this right now because everything is fully cooked. I would suggest tasting it at this stage though, so just grab yourself a spoon and give it a little bit of a taste. That's really good. It has the right amount of kick and heat that I'm looking for. You can taste the depth of the bovril, and you've got the garlic and the ginger in there. That little bit of warmth the cinnamon provides. It has enough salt and pepper, enough chili powder. The paprika just sort of allows everything to just move around and be really, really good in there. Honestly, I don't think that you should add anything else to it. If you want to make it a little bit more spicy, of course you can add more chili powder or more salt if you feel needed. You could also add more red pepper flakes if that's the route you're going with, or anything else that you feel that you would like to add. But otherwise, I think this is good. Now, if you're going to be cooking this for a long period of time, I would suggest keeping the lid off, unless it's going to be cooking for like over an hour. Then I would put the lid on for about a half hour, and then for the last half hour, take the lid off, just so all the liquid can evaporate a little bit and the flavors can really intensify. Because if you keep the lid on, all the moisture is just going to build up in there, and the flavors really aren't going to do anything, and it's not going to become this thick, rich, lovely stew like chili, essentially. So just depending on how long you're going to cook it, I would just, I would not do that, first of all. I just let it simmer on a medium heat. And of course, while this is cooking, this is your perfect opportunity to clean up the kitchen a little bit, put away your ingredients, and just chillax and enjoy yourself, because you've just made a wonderful dish of chili that your family and friends are gonna absolutely love. And if you're like me and you're actually filming this while you're making it, then this is probably the perfect opportunity to film your intro and outro as well. See, I'm thinking, I'm on the same page with you guys. Okay, so while your chili is simmering away at a medium to medium low heat, we're going to prepare a topping for it. Now, as I said before, we're going to put some grated cheese on top. In my opinion, it's the best topping, and it's really not that bad for you if you get the right cheese. So first of all, there is the lazy girl method, which is totally fine. I've been one to use this method before. Blue Menu actually came out with a Tex-Mex light shredded cheese blend. So it's a good source of calcium and everything like that, and it has all the different spices and stuff to flavor it in the cheese already. But it's really not that bad for you. It's low in calories and fat and everything like that. So you can get something like this if that's something that you'd be interested in eating and would like. Or you could go with my classic route, which I love doing. And this is also a cheese by Blue Menu, and it's just their old light cheddar cheese. I love cheddar. It's a great combination for this chili. In my opinion, the best combination for this chili in terms of cheeses. And really, the amount that you're going to grate up just depends on how many servings you're making and how much cheese you like. So I'm just going to go with a chunk of about this size for now, and then we'll just kind of work from there. So we're just going to start grating up with a box grater. You can also use a food processor or anything else that you'd like. I'm sure if you have one of those slap chop grady things or whatever, you can probably use one of those if you like. I'm just grating over top of a bowl just for easy use. A great trick is to grate up a bunch of cheese and then put it in a resealable container or a Ziploc bag in the fridge, and then you can use it for anything, to top anything like this throughout the week, and not have to worry about having to grate everything every time you want some grated cheese. Especially if you're a fan of mini pizzas or putting cheese in salads or anything like that, or just grating or just melting cheese on top of anything. This is a great trick. Get it? Great, because we're grating cheese. Anyway, just ignore me. Be careful when you get to the little nubby bits. Your fingers. Don't want to have bits of fingers going on your chili now, do we? And that's really all there is to it. It's not that difficult. I'm probably going to grate up just a little bit more, and then I'll show you guys what it looks like afterwards. Okay, well, that's everything. That's really all there is to it. I hope you all enjoy it, and please leave your comments down below with any suggestions, comments, concerns, or any requests that you have for future videos. Thank you all so much for watching. Please rate it and give it a thumbs up if you liked the video, and save it to your favorites. And I guess I'll see you guys in the next video. This is Maddie, signing off. Bye, guys.